That's on.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I can ask you all to please find your seats. We're going to begin the hearing in just a moment. Boy, what a responsive group. It wasn't like this when I was teaching at San Diego State. I'd like to welcome you all to an official meeting of the Senate Budget Subcommittee number 1. It's a subcommittee that handles education issues. Our hearings are normally held up in Sacramento, but this is a particularly important informational hearing on SB 850 programs. Those are 4-year degrees offered by community colleges. And we have a number of people I want to recognize and thank before we begin the formal program. First of all, I want to thank our hostess, Chancellor Constance Carroll from the San Diego Community College District, for putting this on for us and for the great parking you made available to us. Thank you, Constance. Then I also want to recognize her board members who are here, Maria Senior and Peter Zici, both elected officials sitting on the board of the San Diego Community College District. And again, thank the two of you for that. Our panelists are here. Our panelists are kind of an all-star collection of community college folk and workforce folk from all over the state. And you will get to meet them. Each panel will come up as a group when I introduce them, and then they will have about 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes per person to speak on the topic. At the conclusion of the panels, we will have public comment. And that's for general members of the public or any other community college CEOs or board member, whoever is here who wants to address the board. We'll have a microphone set up in front here for you to address the committee. I want to thank my district office staff, Chris Ward, Chief of Staff, and the others for putting this event together, and Jack Beresford from the Community College District for working with our communications, our press relations. Also want to thank Kevin Powers on my left here. He has staffed me in Sacramento for 8 years on higher ed issues and was very instrumental in getting SB 850, the community college 4-year degree bill, passed. And of course, Anita Lee, who staffs the Budget Subcommittee number 1. She's done a phenomenal job through the years and also putting this hearing together. And a very special thanks to my colleagues in the legislature who are here. Ben Allen serves as a member of the Budget Subcommittee. It's only a 3-member committee. This is interesting, too. It's a 3-member committee that basically handles half of the state budget, because that's how much of the state budget goes toward education. So we're talking about $60 billion, and Ben has done a tremendous job. Senator John Morlock also serves on the committee. John is not able to be here today, although he says he may try to make it here late if possible. Then we have 2 guests who are here today. To Ben Allen's right is Senator Jerry Hill. Senator Hill chairs the Business and Professions Committee in the Senate, has keen interest in higher ed issues as well, and in fact carried a bill in 2009 that would have permitted San Mateo Community College District to offer bachelor's degrees. That was followed up by a couple more efforts that I had to expand the powers of community colleges to offer bachelor's degree. Unfortunately, those 3 efforts were all unsuccessful. Finally, in 2014, SB 850 passed, and we'll talk a lot about that today. And to Jerry's right is the chair of the Assembly Higher Education Committee, Assemblyman Jose Medina. And any expansion of community college programs has to go through the higher education chair in the Assembly. So Jose's the guy. So I want to thank the 3 of them for being here. The purpose of this hearing really is to educate them and me as fully as possible on the current status of the 4-year program, where those of you in the field see it going, so we'll hear from several panels about that. And then, as you know, I'm leaving the legislature, so it will be in their very capable hands to fine-tune the program, to expand the program, however they see fit with the input of folks from the various panels who will be here today. You know, a week from today is Election Day. And I'm sure most of us want to see it get over with already. It's been very contentious, very partisan. I've got to tell you, in Sacramento, one thing that has not been partisan has been support of community colleges and support of the bachelor's degree. In 2014, when we passed Senate Bill 850, it was with unanimous agreement from both houses and both parties. So this is a program who, if we do well, if you all do well with the first 15 programs, I think we'll see expanded greatly over the course of the next several years. It satisfies a demand from students, a demand from the workforce, and really a demand from the state of California to keep California competitive with the rest of the world by having highly trained, skilled workers. We're going to hear from panel today about the demand. We're also going to hear about the capacity and capability of our community colleges. The format is this. We will have 3 panels. The first panel, and some of you have agendas in front of you. The first panel will be on the demand for bachelor's degrees. We'll hear from Patrick Murphy from the Public Policy Institute of California and Larry Galizio from the Community College League of California. Then we'll talk about a case study, San Diego, look at local workforce needs, hear from Hernan Luis Viprado from the Workshop for Warriors, and then Andy Hall from the San Diego Workforce Partnership, and then Dr. Nabil Abu Ghazala from the president of Grossmont Community College. And then the third panel will be on Senate Bill 850 in particular, its implementation so far. We'll hear from Dr. Pam Walker, who is from the Chancellor's Office of the statewide Community College Chancellor's Office and has been key to implementing the program thus far. Constance Carroll, who is Chancellor of the Community College District and took a lead among chancellors to set the groundwork to make this program successful. Dr. Sonny Cook, Superintendent President of Miracosta Community College District, who is also implementing a key program, a key 4-year program. And Dr. Ding Joan Curry, who is running a research institute that's going to be watching how this program progresses. During the 3 panels, my colleagues from the Senate and Assembly will feel free to ask informational questions if there's anything they need clarification on at any time, but we'll hold most of their questions for the end of each panel. At the end of each panel, there will be unlimited questions from members of the legislature. After the 3 panels have completed their work, we will have public comment. Again, panelists, we're looking at about 5 to 10 minutes per presentation. For public comment, 2 or 3 minutes per member of the public making comment. I want to tell my colleagues that the microphones in front of you, they're touch microphones, so if you want to turn them on to speak, you just hit them and you'll see a green light pop on. That indicates to you you're live. Same thing for panelists. You have a mic with, again, a touch and a green light. With that, I think it's time now to begin our hearing by calling up the first panel, and that's Dr. Patrick J. Murphy, Director of Research and Senior Fellow at the Public Policy Institute of California, and Dr. Larry Galizio, President of the Community College League of California. And Dr. Murphy will begin first.
There it's on. Well, first, I'd like to thank you, Senator, and thank the Chancellor for inviting us down here. It's a pleasure to be here. I also should note that prior to being the research director at PPIC, I taught political science for about 20 years at the University of San Francisco. And so to be in front of you today talking about community colleges and the degree gap is much more preferred than being in front of a group of, say, 18 and 19-year-olds and having them say, so what's going on with the election? This is a much more pleasant topic for me. So in any case, it's one that has a number of challenges with it. What I would like to do today is sort of give you a sense of how we have projected the need for bachelor's degrees in California, talk about a little bit of way in which we could see that gap closing, and then talk a little bit more about where community colleges offering bachelor's degrees, in a sense, what we know about that, less about California, but just offer a couple of examples. I will say that the testimony in a more complete form will show up on our webpage later today, probably, or tomorrow, and obviously it'll be part of the record for the hearing. So PPIC last year projected, they had done this before, but we updated them for 2030, took a look at sort of if we keep things currently going at our current rate of producing bachelor's degrees, we estimated that by 2030, we would need about 3.1, or we would produce about 3.1 million bachelor's degrees. But by 2030, our economy would be demanding about 4.2. So I always think of it as almost the mouth of the alligator, right? The gap between those. That challenge of producing that or closing that 1.1 million gap is a significant one. And earlier this spring, Hans Johnson, my colleague and senior fellow at PPIC, testified before an Assembly Budget Committee and provided a scenario of ways in which you could close that gap. And the projections that he provided are just that. They're projections, but at least a way in which he could sort of quantify and demonstrate that it is possible to do it, but it requires quite a bit of heavy lifting on part of all the systems and really all of those involved in higher education. The other piece that I would just overlay that, I just want to walk through a couple of the components, but overlaying it all, none of that happens unless we substantially increase the success rate, entrance and success rate of students who are currently underrepresented in our higher education institutions, first-generation college students, low-income students, Latinos, and African Americans. I mean, that's sort of job one right at the front end. The other pieces then are the sort of splitting that out. What we see as the components of that are expanding access to the four-year institutions, so increasing those numbers in the master plan of who is going to the UCs and the CSUs, growing the number of transfers to those institutions pretty dramatically, increasing completion rates across the board, and then the assumptions within there would have the private, nonprofit, and for-profits continue at the same rate of growth. They would sort of mirror what we see happening in the public sector. What I would say with that is that would require all of the sectors, as I said at the top of my comments, it requires everyone kind of working together to do it. And then also, if you look at that scenario on our webpage, it's not the only way to do it, right? We talked about, assuming that this type of completion rate, if you increase that, you don't have to have as many students starting into the system. So there's a number of different ways to get it. We aren't suggesting there's one single way. But the reality is that the emphasis and the effort has to start now if we're going to actually realize that goal by 2030. I would point out that the assumptions in our scenarios are pretty ambitious. I think it's fair to ask whether or not they're realistic. We did do another report that came out in April looking at CSU's completion initiative. From 2009 to 2015, their 6-year completion rate increased 6 percentage points, from 51% to 57%. That is that the students who start as it were freshmen in year one, 6 years later, they've obtained a bachelor's degree. Now, Chancellor White there has put forward his own ambitious effort that he would like to see that number go to 70% by 2025. So my point being that, one, we've made some progress in that area along one of these fronts, and that we do have that system, like folks in the community college, trying to work to find ways in which they can improve that and hopefully sort of close that gap or close down that alligator mouth. As Senator Block noted, and I think really the main focus, California embarked on having community colleges offer bachelor's degrees. I don't have much to say about that since obviously we're at the very front end of that program. If I'm not mistaken, in the background it noted there's about 200 students enrolled in that program to start with, again at the very early stages of it. I would like to offer 2 examples of states that are ahead of us or started earlier on this to give you some sense of a couple of different paths this could take. Washington State, about 10 years ago, approved a pilot program, much like California's, looking for specific programs that could be offered that aren't currently being offered by the four-year institutions. That pilot became part of the state's regular programming in 2010. Currently today, there's about 30 different fields in which community colleges are offering bachelor's degrees. They produce, though, at least in the last year, I have data for about 300 bachelor's degrees. That's about 1%, little less than the 33,000 bachelor's degrees that Washington State produces overall. Florida started down this path about 15 years ago. They took a much more aggressive approach to it, I would describe it as. Today, 24 of Florida's 28 community colleges, which they don't call them community colleges anymore, they're just called colleges, are offering bachelor's degrees in 170 different programs. In 2015, those colleges produced 6,900 bachelor's degrees. That's about 7% of the state's over 100,000 bachelor's degrees. So just to give you a perspective of, there's as we sit at the front end of this, a couple of different directions in which this could go. Currently, I would describe California as obviously closer to Washington's than Florida's. The Washington numbers are small. My sort of desire in sort of the drumbeat that we're happy to beat at PPIC, though, is to not overlook the role of community colleges in terms of four-year degrees writ large, whether they're supplying the bachelor's degrees for these specific fields, or in terms of the big lever with this is the transfers to four-year undergraduate institutions. Just in the fun fact category, community colleges in California transfer 103,000 students to four-year institutions in a year. In the closing the gap scenario that we played out, we said, wow, we would like to see that increase maybe another 35%, so we're talking another 35,000 students transferring. If that gets realized, we're talking tens of thousands of four-year degrees being earned by that year 2030 that we're looking for. So in sum, it's all of the systems playing a part. It is a heavy lift, there is no doubt. There is no one path, and in fact, there's lots of levers. They are transfers, they are increasing articulation on the part of the 4 years. There are community colleges providing bachelor's degrees. It is the private nonprofits stepping up as well. All of those working together if we're going to realize this important goal, which if we have more students with bachelor's degrees, it improves their own position. But I can argue just very selfishly, it's a lot better for all of us in California in terms of what they contribute to the economy. And if you want to go really down to the bottom line, they pay taxes and that's more revenue for the state, so we can roll it back into more programs. So I thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Now we move to Larry Galizio, President of the Community College League of California. Larry.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Chair Block, Chair Medina, Senators Hill and Allen, thank you very much for the opportunity. And I was fortunate enough to be one of those community college transfers, and now a lifetime of disappointing football season as a Golden Bear. So I wanted to focus on three areas. Number one, sort of if not the flip side, but another side of the demand part of the equation, which is in addition to the industry demand that we all know exists, the student and family demand for quality, pragmatic, affordable college degrees. And then secondly, I'd like to talk about the baccalaureate degree as one of the necessary means to confront the projected $1.1 million education or attainment or workforce gap, as Dr. Murphy mentioned. And then finally, for comparative purposes, I'd like to touch on very briefly, I promise, just my experience as a former commissioner on the Northwest the Northwest Colleges and Universities Accreditation Commission, which oversaw Washington State, Oregon, and 5 other states, a total of 7 states, 156 institutions. So I have some familiarity, just comparison from a different state perspective. Also, I was a member of the Oregon Assembly there, and I just want to say here that the job that you, Senator Block, and all of you, I think it's very fair to say objectively, and I have empirical evidence that you're doing a much better job than my former colleagues in Oregon, so thank you. I'm excited to be here. And I'm going to get a lot of angry emails about that one. That's okay. And then finally, I'd like to also briefly mention my experience being a college president at a rural coastal college, which had issues and desire among industries to do baccalaureate degrees, but of course we didn't get that done in the state of Oregon. So first, we talk a lot about the industry demand, but whether it's Chancellor Carroll, Superintendent President Cook, or all of you here who work at community colleges and in higher ed, we know that the absolute demand from students and families and community members for a really affordable, practical, quality baccalaureate degree is something that's not unprecedented, but the pressure has never been greater. So that's another, when we look at California's overall demand for baccalaureate degrees, in addition to the 1.1 million needs for industry, it's also the demand that we get as community colleges and all the segments for affordable degrees. So UCLA, as some of you might know, has for 50 years done the most comprehensive analysis of incoming freshmen. And the 2015 survey data are quite compelling. Price sensitivity, in other words, the cost of attending college, was the most important that it has ever been for incoming freshmen and their families in the 50 years history of that survey, as is, when you ask students and families, the importance of getting a good job as a top reason to attend higher education. 85% of the students in this survey cited getting a better job as a primary reason. And even though this is incoming freshmen in current baccalaureate degree granting institutions, it's still instructive for all of us. Compared to freshmen in 1990 in the survey, a full twice the number in the 2015 survey cited cost as a key factor as to why they chose a particular institution. So as public colleges and universities, we have as you know, as policymakers, have a especially important task. I have more data on that. I would urge you to take a look at that survey, but our time is short here. But the important thing to remember is while here, those of us sitting here November 1st, 2016, it's not surprising and it's unremarkable that families and students are demanding affordable higher education. Contextualized historically over the sweep of even the last 50 years of higher education, this is really a dramatic shift, this absolute demand by students and families for an affordable baccalaureate degree. So I want that to be an important part of the equation. Now, as we know, whether it was Corinthian colleges or ITT or others, the for-profit institutions have been very keen and eager and have taken advantage of that gap that exists. And while there are for-profit higher education institutions that do a fine job, unfortunately, everyone here knows the disaster that has taken place as we've had this incredible education attainment gap. So where you have more than 70% of the public higher education students in California attending a community college, if we look at the need, the demand, and the institutions, the for-profits that have been keen to try to fill that gap, I'm really pleased to be here today and for your leadership, because we can do and we will do and we are guarantee we're going to do a better job, more quality degrees. The other thing is, as you know, what the for-profits have very aggressively gone after are returning veterans. right? California has 1.8 million veterans living in the state. Community colleges have, I think, 44,000 or so attending one of our 113 colleges. At the same time, if you look at the numbers of the for-profits, they've been very successful at luring veterans with, quite frankly, a lot of overpromising. And so we're still working through that, and this movement, Senate Bill 850, and the corollary work is really critical in better serving our veterans. I appreciate Dr. Murphy's metaphor of the alligator, and then you mentioned Florida, and I think we probably have agreement between, among the two of us, or between the two of us, that we don't want to be like Florida and go that far to the end. At the same time, even if we were to follow the current timeline of SB 850, according to PPIC's projections, with a moderate increase in all the areas that Dr. Murphy mentioned, we'd still be 600,000 degrees, bachelor degrees short, and that's a problem. So although community college baccalaureate degrees will not get us, an extra 200, 300, 400, 500,000, it lays the groundwork. It begins to utilize the public resources to attack that workforce education and attainment gap. And so I would urge that we do whatever we can to move this as expeditiously, although as deliberately as possible. Finally, I did want to observe, just for comparative sake, that I was a commissioner in the Northwest, and they oversee 7 different states, 156 institutions, baccalaureate, independent, or private colleges, community colleges. And because I was from Oregon, and I had to do other states in my analysis as a commissioner, every single meeting I would have several substantive change proposals from Washington community colleges. And Washington community colleges have been, I think, quite effective. It's not absolutely equivalent to what we're doing here, but it's been quite successful, and I think they're a very good model. But the important thing being that accrediting bodies do have experience with this, with the substantive change. It mandates industry acknowledgement for the need and the demand, and you have to have the financial element. And that's, of course, another really critical aspect of this, is having the financial resources, not just the human capital, but the financial resources to do this right, Secondly, as a community college president in a rural coastal area, we had a hospital nearby that served, it was a coastal area, so it had a larger senior population. We had a very effective nursing program that only granted associate degrees. The hospital came to us and said, look, you have to confer baccalaureate degrees because that's where the industry is going. Unfortunately, unlike California, the Oregon legislature did not pay heed to this problem, and still today, that rural area is without a so students are an hour-and-a-half drive to Portland, and the hospital is still without people in the workforce needed. Finally, I did want to, in addition to thanking all of you on this dais for the great work, and Chancellor Carroll and everyone else, as my role at the League, I want to offer to you, Chair Block, Chair Medina, Senators Hill and Allen, our resources as a convening body, however we could be helpful for these deliberative conversations, helping to bring in expert testimony, whatever we can do as the Community College League. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. At this point, I'll ask my colleagues if there are any questions or comments for the first panel. Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for the presentation. I really, we knew what the problem was, obviously, from reading the PPIC analysis and study, but you went into some great detail, and I appreciate that very much. The question for both of you really is, and it's kind of outside of the presentations that you made in describing the challenge that we're faced with in terms of getting the numbers and the demand and the need that we have. What do you see from your experience and from the analysis as the greatest challenge that we face in achieving this goal of meeting that 1.1 million at the end of the day? I mean, obviously, even with the the work that's proposed, the chances of getting there are slim. But what do you think are the main obstacles to getting there?
For me, there's two, but I would describe them both under the heading of sort of transitions. So one is that it's beyond, we talk about education, let's extend it all. It's that making sure we are both encouraging and preparing enough students through the K-12 system so that they're both ready to go to college and thinking about going to college. And that gets to that overarching point, which is if we're going to achieve it, it means a lot of students who we're traditionally are not thinking about or haven't attended college, either 2-year or 4-year, start thinking about it. The second is that if we're looking to increase baccalaureate degrees, that transfer bridge needs to be smoother, it needs to be wider, it needs to sort of function nicely so that we start, we have some great examples of regional articulation where it moves rather smoothly. I'd love to see that the whole state.
Thank you. Senator Hill, you have, go ahead.
May I?
Larry, of course.
So I would say one is resources. To do this correctly, it takes resources. And despite $60 billion, you have very difficult choices to make. However, again, if you look at where the public students in higher education are, I can't remember, was it Lucky Luciano who said, why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. Well, how do you help with this gap when 70% of the students are attending our community colleges? But resources, I think, are a legitimate question. A little bit. That's not the totality, but I think that's a really significant issue.
Senator Allen.
Yeah, I know we're going to talk more about SB 850 specifically during the third panel, but since we've got folks of your caliber here, I'd love to hear your thoughts on where you'd like to see the next generation of this legislation go. It seemed to me that SB 850 ended up being this rather elegant compromise with the Cal State and UC system to a lesser extent, and kind of pushed our community colleges to jump into some bizarre hoops to create new majors to help meet the demand, where the kind of core demand seems to be in more traditional majors. Where would you, so what are the lessons that we ought to take out of your findings as we think about ways to tweak or expand or change SB 850? And of course, recognizing the institutional and jurisdictional tensions that exist between our various systems. I know it's a perhaps provocative and dangerous question, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I like provocative and dangerous. Well, thank you, Senator Allen, for your question. Chair Block, Senator Allen. I think 1960 is a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I'm a beneficiary of the the master plan for higher education. And I would love to have met Clark Kerr. But 2016, the alligator's mouth, we're even ramping things up with the status quo. We're going to have 600,000 individuals short. So where I'd like to see things go is more quickly toward community college, baccalaureate degree, so we can, as a state, more effectively address this incredibly important issue as baby boomers retire. I mean, it's frightening. It really is frightening. We're sort of joking at one level, but this is scary. So there's just no way we're going to be able to meet the demand. So I would like to see things moving as expeditiously as possible with the quality controls. I know it's a very contentious and is difficult. If you look at the healthcare field, whether it's nursing or others, there is an absolute demand for baccalaureate degree granting. If we want to help our rural areas, to give them job opportunities. So whatever, there's no simple answer. Politically, it's difficult, but this is a very different environment in which we work. And so to the extent we can utilize public resources without being duplicative and have intersegmental
But what's wrong with being duplicative when being duplicative meets a widespread need?
I think that's a very good question that I don't have an answer to. I'll turn it over to my
Someone who doesn't do provocative well. But in any case, what I would say is a couple of things. One is I really like the notion of SB 850 in the sense that it is tied to where there's demand, right? We've got a lot of higher ed executive administrators, and each one of them right now could tell us stories of people who want to expand a program within their college, and they're very well-meaning, and some of them are very exciting, but many of them might not have a demand that we know of, at least out in the economy, that is where we really could meet or fit. And I would love to do them all, but we have to set priorities. 850 puts that at least at the front. Each of those programs, there was a need to demonstrate or identify that there was a desire. Students who would go through those programs would be met on the other side by a community and economy that wants those jobs, and so wants to give them jobs. And so that, I think, is great. You're really raising the question of scale, and there I'm going to do a delicate retreat in some ways, but at least push it in the context of something that we've said in a number of places that we feel would help drive a lot of this, and that's to agree upon what the state goals are, and then how do we get there, and then ask how do each of the segments play a role in that. And if our traditional 4 years aren't able to expand that access that we talk about in our scenarios, then we have to find some place that could provide that access and provide that throughput. But we don't have agreement as to where we're trying to get, aside from we know we need more. It's not a very delicate pivot. It's a straight avoidance, but I'll do my best to pretend it's a pivot.
Yeah, no, I understand, and I get that, this was a product of a sort of, a difficult compromise based on expectations and jurisdictional lines laid down in the 60s that have generally served us very well. So I know we'll be discussing this more in panel 3, but I appreciate your pivots on this.
Thank you, Senator. Chair Medina.
Yeah, my question is kind of a follow-up to what you mentioned on demand, and SB 850, when it was became law, California became the 22nd state, and you mentioned the state of Washington, the state of Florida, and their programs. So my question is, how did other states determine what degrees were offered? How did other states determine where the most demand was, and how did that correlate to the degrees that are offered in other states? How can we learn from other states' experiences?
So, Chair Block, Chair Medina, I don't pretend to know what's happened at all those other 21 states, including New York, which in 1971, allowed community colleges to begin conferring baccalaureate degrees, although they are certainly not the largest producer, if I can use a term I don't particularly like, of degrees. But I don't think it has been radically different from how things have taken place here. Typically starts with industry demand. Industry will go to community college leaders, such as those you see here, or policymakers such as yourself, and say, hey, we need help with our workforce. What can you do? And so, but you have the accrediting commissions, the regional accreditors certainly involved, and they all require a substantive change, as we see here in California, where you have to have the data and the evidence and the research that illustrates the projections for workforce shortages. Then you have to be able to show that you have credentialed faculty. You have to show that you have the resources, and then of course you have to have the political obstacles removed. So that's my understanding of typically how it's gone, and I'm not aware of any states where it's been radically different, although my knowledge of this is, I'd say, superficial.
Thank you. If there are no further comments from panelists and no further questions, I would like to thank and excuse this panel and call up panel number 2. Panel number 2, Hernan Luis Prado, the founder and president of Workshop for Warriors. Andy Hall, vice president and chief program officer of the San Diego Workforce Partnership. And Dr. Nabil Abu Ghazala, president of Grossmont College. Please come forward, gentlemen. And we'll hear from the presenters in the order on which they appear in your agenda. So we'll begin with Mr. Prado.
Thank you, Senator Block. If you can hear me. Good morning. Thank you, Senator Block, esteemed panelists. I appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you. My name is Hernan Luis Prado. I'm the founder of Workshops for Warriors, which is currently the only nonprofit in the U.S. that's training full-time active duty personnel, transitioning personnel, veterans, and wounded warriors. We're located on Main Street, San Diego, and offer advanced manufacturing training that results in nationally recognized portable credentials for our students. And we train them in computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacturing, welding, machinery repair, and all of our credentials are offered through the National Institute of Metalworking Skills, the American Welding Society, OSHA, SolidWorks, Mastercam, and NCC3. So these are credentials that our graduates can take with them and go anywhere in the world. Our programs are designed to be 4 months long, and at the end of which they earn a minimum of 3 nationally recognized credentials. I think our top student in April earned 15 nationally recognized credentials. Since 2008, we have a 94% job placement for 321 graduates that have earned over 1,200 credentials amongst them. Our graduates hail from anywhere in the U.S., and they go back to anywhere in the U.S. And for those of you that are familiar with manufacturing, there are currently 2.3 million unfilled advanced manufacturing jobs in the United States, and that number is expected to grow to 3.7 million. So I know we're in a community college right now, and San Diego City College is actually our educational provider or partner for a Department of Labor apprenticeship program that we currently are engaged in since 2015. So there's definitely a place for bachelor's programs, master's, and the rest of other academic careers. My goal and our focus is to get transitioning service members, of which there'll be over 1 million in the next 5 years, and transition them quickly into a job that can help rebuild America's economic engine, rebuild America's manufacturing might, and add to the tax base versus the ER and penal system burden. So I'd be happy to take, right now we're in the midst of a $21 million expansion on Main Street to increase our throughput from 120 graduates a year to 450 graduates per year. So again, we founded our school in 2008. San Diego is going to be the place where we have our main facility, our train-the-trainer facility. We've been asked by the Secretary of the Navy and President Obama to start 103 schools throughout the nation. GI Bill will enable us to do so in December 2018, at which point we'll be able to fund our own expansion. Currently, classes are offered at no cost, again, at no cost to our students, and our school is run completely on individual donations, nonprofit organizations, and other institutions that are aligned with our viewpoint. So I'm open for any questions if you'd like.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. I'm told that you may have to leave early.
Yes, sir.
So if members of the panel have any questions, members of the committee have any questions directly for Mr. Prado, you may ask them now since he is leaving shortly.
Does he have any materials from?
Senator Allen?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. We have electronic material, printed
It's all
material.
electronic, okay.
No,
I'd
and
love to-
printed whatever you like. We'd be happy to send it to you.
I'd
We're in
appreciate
San
that.
Diego, so we like to save trees.
Good. Okay. Well, I'm happy to look online. What's the website?
It's wfwusa.org, wfwusa.org, Workshops for Warriors, and we're located on downtown San Diego, on Main Street, right in front of the Naval Base,
Cool. Thank you.
about 5 minutes from here.
And thanks for your work with our veterans.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, this whole panel, for actually your interest in what we're doing. We're really interested in a data-driven approach to get veterans particularly, to avoid them doing this fatal dip, we call it, from transitioning from the service to becoming unemployed happens far more often than we think. And I think the public perception is that veterans like to do what they've been doing for 20 years, and that's historically not the case. So I'm fortunate to have married the world's prettiest nerd. And my wife's a survey methodologist and statistician, so everything that we do is really data-driven. We found that 17% of the students that go through our program actually want to do what they've done in the service, 17%. So we wind up getting a lot of people that have zero background. Please, go ahead.
Yeah, so my one thing that I was thinking about, I know there's been a challenge with the extent to which our college system at all levels gives credit to veterans for combat-related or just service-related academic skills. And could you speak to that a little bit? I mean, this came up at a big meeting we had not too long ago at the VA in Westwood, and what we ought to be doing from the state to help with this issue.
Again, I hope this won't offend anybody because I'm great at doing that, which is we have to reframe the argument a little bit, which is veterans need a job right now, this moment. They can't wait 4 years. They can't wait 2 years. Now, if you have degrees, which we all do, they're on this board, what we have to do is figure out what I call the on-off ramp. You have to give an immediate way right now, this second, of getting that person a dignified life, right now. Enable them to pay for their mortgage, their cars, their kids in school, because they have a tremendous amount of financial inertia when they leave the service that can't be shut off like that. So you immediately need to get them an $18 an hour job. Before you even think about anything else, start them with that job. Once they have that job, then they can go to community college, they can go to other places and build their academic careers, get their degrees, by all means. But we need to get them jobs quickly. So regardless of their experience in the military, that won't help them get that job immediately. Mm-hmm. People love veterans. We all agree. Everyone loves veteran. I'd love for anyone to raise their hands if they say you don't love a veteran. We love it. Cameras are rolling. We're happy to point that out, right? But loving a veteran does not make them a good welder or a machinist or a fabricator. They just won't. And what people don't realize is that veterans get anywhere from 4 months to 4 years of training to become proficient in their military occupation. They get 1 week of training to become a civilian again. But what they're told is, as soon as you get out, you're going to do what you did in the service, which is pay your bills, maintain your credit card, et cetera, and you just can't. So they have this fatal chasm as soon as they get out. We need to find a way as a society, and San Diego is great at doing that, to build a bridge across this chasm and enable them to quickly, that's why our programs are 4 months long, to quickly get an $18 an hour job. Once they do that, then by all means, go to City College. Most of our students are enrolled in City College and at our school. So they get a job as a result of the training. They go to City College, they use their GI Bill. They come back to our school later on for night classes to get their $20 to $22 an hour job. And we do these on and off ramps, which is what I call them on. So you get on the on-ramp of a career, and while you're doing that, then you can take a little detour, get an associate's, get back on the on-ramp again, keep making money for your family, then get a bachelor's. You can do both. It's not exclusively vocational, it's not exclusively academic. And I think America will win if you're able to join forces again and have an engineer be able to put up drywall, have a surgeon be able to fix their car. We need to reintegrate society right now, and I think we're drifting apart a little bit as military and civilians. We need to kind of bring those together again. Same with academia and vocational training.
Thank you, Mr. Crowd. Before we excuse you, before we excuse you, I just want to tell you, when we first thought about SB 850, one reason it came to mind was I had a veteran who came into my office who had been a medic in the Army, actually, came to my office and said that she wanted to be a nurse. She had trouble getting into nursing programs. San Diego State was full, and other programs. She had been, maybe through your program, but through a short program where she did get a job where she was able to provide for her family. But then she went to one of our private for-profits and went to try to get a nursing degree, spent 4 years of her time, approximately $40,000, both of her money and our money through GI Bill, got her nursing degree. When she applied to take the testing to become a registered nurse, she was refused.
Right.
She was told that the program that she went to, the private for-profit, wasn't accredited.
Right.
Now, she wanted, of course, to sue this private for-profit. We did some research. It turns out they never said they were accredited, but she didn't think to ask the questions. In their catalog, they had people who looked like nurses in places that looked like hospitals. And this is a problem with a lot of our private for-profits. And I know several people on the panel have done work trying to weed out the bad private for-profits. There certainly are good ones out there, too. But that helped give impetus to looking at, and with all the veterans groups, with Kevin Powers' help, up and down the state supported SB 850 because they don't want to see our veterans taken advantage of by private for-profits who sometimes prey on them, and instead they know that our community colleges can provide our veterans with the opportunity they need, not at $40,000 for a degree, but $10,000 for a degree.
Well, Senator Block, I do definitely understand that viewpoint. I do. Let me show you the flip side of that.
Sure.
All right? You're doing a great job. You're funding for your family, assuming you have one, and then tomorrow you get fired from your job. So what people don't realize is you're in the military. You're in this social fabric where every day you know who to report to, who reports to you, you know who your peers are, you know your place in society. I'm not saying that in a bad way, but you know your role, and your ego's wrapped up in that role. Then you're ripped out of that fabric and chucked to a corner. Now start living life again. Oh, and by the way, and you had that financial inertia that I was telling you about earlier. So what winds up happening is very counterintuitive. When you're in the service, you think everyone that's out of the service is an idiot, that they haven't figured it out. I would never be that homeless guy. I would never do that. That would not be me. But people don't realize, we call it, you take these dumb pills, like they're M&Ms. As soon as you don't get that payment, the 1st and 15th, your mental capacity goes down to 20% of what it was before. And so immediately you say, oh my gosh, what do I do? It's July. Guess what? City College won't take you in July. And without City College taking you in July, you can't get GI Bill.
And that's why both programs are needed, both what you're doing and what the community colleges do
Right.
traditionally, and the 4-year degrees as well. So with that, I want to thank you and excuse you. I know you have to move on. And we'll go to our next panelist, Andy Hall, Vice President, Chief Program Officer with the San Diego Workforce Partnership.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Block and the rest of the STEAM committee for having me here. My name is Andy Hall with the San Diego Workforce Partnership. We're a 501c3 here in San Diego that exists to close the skills gap and create opportunity for all. We're one of 48 state and federally recognized workforce development boards all across the state of California. And we have done a few things with the community colleges that I want to highlight. I have one slide for you all if you want to turn around. I think my job here is to do the best I can to give a few examples about what we're doing in San Diego to identify the need and the skills gap here in San Diego locally. Perhaps that informs broader statewide conversations, and then also give some specific examples of areas that can help increase 4-year degree access. The first thing I want to highlight is about 2 years ago, some forward-thinking folks at the community colleges, like Dr. Sonny Cook, thank you, Dr. Cook, as well as a few others from our shop, realized that for many, many years, if not decades, we had been doing our separate research about the growing jobs in San Diego County. And the community college system would have research about the growing jobs, and our workforce system, where we're required to kind of write our strategic plan about the growing jobs in San Diego, we'd have our own priorities, and they didn't always talk to each other. So a couple of years ago, we decided in 2014, let's put our heads and our money together and let's do some joint research. And what we did is we, based on some criteria that we all agreed on, we came up with 5 priority sectors where there's the biggest skills gap in San Diego. And those 5 are, like Hernan just talked about, advanced manufacturing, information and communications technology, life sciences, clean energy, and healthcare. And in these 5 sectors, these are the kind of poster boards that came out of our full reports that you can all see on our website. What they do is it outlines for young people, job seekers, teachers, and policymakers, what are the top 5 occupations in each of these growing sectors in San Diego that have a skills gap? And what are the average and median, what are the median wages rather, at different education levels? And you can see for healthcare, for example, in San Diego, if you have a bachelor's degree in the healthcare field, your median wage is $57 an hour. That's very, very good. You can also see how the education pipeline in each of these sectors and your return on investment if you invest in further education for yourself, from post-secondary non-degree award at $16 in this case, associate degree, bachelor's degree, and we do the same for all 5 of our sectors. The reason I point this out is because every single local workforce development board should be doing this type of research in their local economy, because how we got this data is we actually asked the employers themselves what their hiring trends are, what their needs are, and what skills and competency gaps they see in the local labor market. And so I think it's this type of data that each of the community college districts and the 48 workforce boards could and should be doing together that I think can inform future curriculum development and programming. And by the way, these do align broadly with the sector navigators and the deputy sector navigators at the community college system. And so we're happy about that. We believe this research should inform future programming. And now I'm going to talk about some of the specific gaps that we found in some of our most recent research. But I just wanted to kind of plug this initially as a way all across the state. There is a built-in resources and structures across the workforce development boards and the community colleges to inform both current and future academic programming at the 2-year degree and the 4-year degree level. And so I just wanted to make sure everyone knows that, because I think it's a big opportunity for us to take advantage of. The only other thing I wanted to highlight here, and there's no slide for it, so you guys are done looking at the slides, is actually, by the way, real quick, we have these posters in about 2,000 schools and post-secondary education institutions all across the county. I think that's a big deal. It's a simple thing, but it helps young people and teachers learn about careers that perhaps they never knew existed. And that can kind of build the demand of students and parents for future programming when they're more informed about the careers in their region that do exist and what they pay and how young people actually access those careers, because a young person certainly can aspire to a career they don't know exists, and a parent of a young person or an adult learner certainly can't advocate for academic programs for careers that they don't know exist. So a big part of the skills gap that we believe and that we've identified and are trying to solve with some of these posters in a real simple way is just closing the awareness gap of the skills gap, because again, how does someone aspire to a career they don't know exists? A few points, and then I'll pass the mic on some of our latest research. Actually, so hot off the presses, there's not even a slide for it. We finished it a couple days ago. But what we did after our research team, after we identified these 5 priority sectors here in San Diego that we're going to focus on, is we profiled 55 occupations that are growing quickly in San Diego that we want to invest our resources in, and we believe other systems, institutions, and service providers should invest their resources in. 55 occupations that kind of cut across these priority sectors that we've identified as there's going to be a shortage of talent in the next 5 years. We picked these occupations with the following criteria. They have higher than average 5-year growth projections. They offer a median wage at or above the $13.09 per hour San Diego living wage for a household of 1, and they require at least a high school diploma or its equivalent. A couple of facts. So we identified these 55 occupations, and we surveyed over 400 employers that employ these occupations, because again, we believe the best way to understand what employers need is to simply ask them. So we asked over 400 employers in San Diego about what their needs are across these 55 occupations in these priority sectors. And a few points that perhaps can inform a conversation and have further questions. 37% of those 400 employers said for the occupations that they hire requires a bachelor degree. 26% said those occupations are associate's degree. So a very high, and then 19% said a graduate degree. Only 18% of those 55 occupations that pay a living wage required a high school degree or above. And so the trend for, as many of you know, the trend for finding a job with a living wage with a high school diploma or less continues to go down here in San Diego, like we see it all over the state and all over the country. And that just speaks to the importance of post-secondary recognized credentials, degrees, or certificates, regardless of the venue. But 37% of the employers said we need, for these 55 occupations, we need bachelor's degree. The other point that I want to bring up is that only 30%, not only, but 30% of the employers said that for those applicants for these 55 occupations that we believe are really driving San Diego's economy, 30% said they couldn't find the desired education level. That means 70% said that they could. But 46%, almost half, said that they just did not have, they might have had the education, but they didn't have the relevant work experience. And I think that brings up an interesting opportunity for perhaps this conversation as we look for creative ways to integrate bachelorette degrees with some hands-on work experience throughout the curriculum. I think would meet many of the employers that we asked, at least in this study, the need for both post-secondary recognized credentials, certificates, and degrees, but also relevant work experience. For example, 59% of the employers that we researched who hire these 55 occupations in San Diego County said that we want folks coming in with at least 6 months of experience in a related position. 6 months in a related position could fit in a four-year bachelorette degree and it could look like an internship, it could look like a couple of summers, it could look like an apprenticeship program. But we think that the idea of marrying this kind of traditional education in the classroom and some hands-on work experience would meet these employer needs in these 55 priority occupations in our 5 priority sectors. So we think there's a lot that we could do here in that case by kind of integrating these two learning styles, because you just can't replicate the technical and hands-on learning that employers offer in role in a work site in the classroom. So both are certainly needed, at least according to our employers. The last point I want to make, and in particular, if part of the stated goals is access for underrepresented populations, we serve about 25,000 primarily low-income students and job seekers and disconnected youth in San Diego County through our system, and we in the last fiscal year, the majority of those folks are low-income, and when you ask them for folks who perhaps have dropped out of shorter long-term training programs, the number one thing that folks say is that life happens, and because when we're faced with choices about working and putting food on the table and attending training or education, the choice is typically easy. It's typically the former. And how can we provide more flexible scheduling times, earn and learn opportunities where folks are earning a paycheck and increasing skills in a post-secondary education institution, so that our folks, especially underrepresented populations, don't have to make the choice between furthering their education and training and putting food on the table, because that's an easy choice, and it's a choice that's not going to lead to more access to higher education. So I guess I'll leave my comments there, and I think questions at the end. So thank you.
Thank you, Andy. And now we'll move on to Dr. Ghazala.
Good morning. So just by way of introduction, my name is Nabil Abu Ghazali. I'm the president of Grossmont College. I've been in the community college system, the California community college system, for 27 years. As a second career, I found that engineering was not my field, and education was. And so as an engineering scientist, I was a classic misfit for the work I did as a drafting instructor. And I wish Mr. Luisi Prado was still here, because I wanted to just acknowledge my 10-year teaching career was a classic example of seeing the fit that California community colleges have in the evolving technology and the evolving educational environment, working on retraining displaced workers in the 1990s, working on updating technology as it was coming in. And I like to claim that I never taught the same course twice in my 10 years because the technology was shifting that rapidly. I'm trying to introduce the evolving, or the ability for the community college DNA to evolve. And I promise I'll get off that's a metaphor soon, but I am actually one who has evolved on the community college bachelor's degree. In the sense that, with 3 UC degrees, I came into this highly structured perspective of the role of each institution. And I want to read this because I want to get it right. I would like to start my presentation by thanking Senator Block for his leadership. As a student of higher education, I note that the SB 850 has opened the door to our community college students to pursue relevant and much-needed bachelor's level study in an as impactful a way as the CSU Doctor of Education program has done for me and for a new generation of educational leaders. And I'm drawing that comparison to say it's not just the California Community College that's changing. The CSUs are changing. And as I started my doctoral studies, one of my professors, Dr. Jingjo Curry, is in the audience here, so I hope I get this right, or I'll get a bad grade. But as I was starting in a CSU EDD, the CSU started offering a second doctorate. I believe it was in nursing practice, and so we continue to grow. And I need to personalize this experience because many of our educational leaders come from the prestigious, selective university, and perhaps have had that perspective that there is a place for each institution. And frankly, Senator Block, you have put that on its, turned it on its head. The world has changed, and I don't believe it can change back. My involvement with the California Community College bachelor's degree actually started when in my former job as president of West Los Angeles College, one of the 2 California community colleges that competed for and was granted the privilege of offering the bachelor's in dental hygiene. I left the institution before it started its teaching, but this would be the semester when it became effectively one of the pilot colleges offering a bachelor's instruction. And to see the degree with which we had to compete locally within the college, between colleges in a large district, and then around the state, amongst the 36 colleges that competed for, 36 districts that competed for the bachelor's degrees, is both troublesome and exhilarating. It's exhilarating when you're given that privilege because we knew our students and could see that, in fact, they could do it. In fact, they were doing the harder work of clinical work and and to compete and take the same certification exams as students who are paying 10 times as much for their bachelor's degrees, and to be successful at the same rate. You can't be more successful than 100% in certification exams. I say this to say the community college can do it. The community college has been doing it. And some would argue that some of the programs are already at the bachelor's degree level simply because the amount of preparation that students who do clinical work have to do before they get into those programs. That said, I am now the president of Grossmont College, which is an 18,000 student college that serves traditional students, historically underserved students, and refugees from conflict zones around the world. And so we are, as a college, continuing to change whom we are serving, even as we continue to adhere to our college mission. And I think this is a true story in many ways for most of our California community colleges. It is not unique that we are adjusting how and whom we serve. We are also a promise institution. Our higher ed promise in the Grossmont-Cuyahoga Community College District was launched a year ago to try to engage those 40% of our local high school graduates who went to college nowhere, to expand again their perspective of of the opportunity for higher education. it's a privilege to come after Mr. Hall because I don't really need to introduce much of the information in our workforce initiatives study in San Diego County. Thank you for that. It's tremendous work. And so again, to set the scene of where we are, I would say as a college, we're looking at the health sciences sector and the advanced manufacturing sector. Advanced manufacturing is such a broad area and has some relevance, of course, to my own background. And so as we look at how we can prepare for disciplines and programs that have not yet arrived on the scene, because we have to prepare ourselves to train people who will help build the industry. The two areas we're looking at are unmanned aerial vehicles, the UAVs, the drones, if you will. And I am very serious about this as a high-tech industry, brewing science. It is a local industry that is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and people need to be trained to maintain, the skill set and to advance that industry. That said, we are also a premier provider of instruction in allied health and nursing. Grossmont College has cardiovascular technology, occupational therapy assistant instruction, orthopedic technology, respiratory technology, and a diversity of sub-disciplines. And so I'm not going to go for the safe one and grab at the, at the emerging technologies area. I am going to grab at the third rail. Today has been a conversation of courage, I think, and so it is nursing I want to talk about. An area that has been I think for good pragmatic reasons excluded from the initial pass of the bachelor's, the community college bachelor's program, but I think one that's very important to talk about. Time is very limiting, so I will say demand for the associate's degree is still strong. RNs who are completing the ADN, the associate degree in nursing, succeeding with it and passing the NCLEX, are getting jobs increasingly, but they are not as competitive as as the industry wants. There's increasing demand. I think the baccalaureate degree preferred in our region. I'm referring to information from UC San Francisco study. 85% of the employers are preferring the bachelor's degree in nursing. Employers are hiring nurses, but they're still having struggles if they have the ADN, the associate degree only, because of preference for the bachelor's degree. And it is driven by national accreditation associations, if you will, suggesting, and there is strong evidence that somebody with a bachelor's degree is going to be a better nurse. So even as the demand for nursing for the RN increases, in fact, our nurses are having trouble getting jobs because they are not meeting that demand, and employers appear to be competing for experienced nurses to the exclusion of the well-prepared but inexperienced nurses. There's much in these studies by UC San Francisco, by our sector studies and so on, that points to the need for training in the industry. We certainly would suggest that 100 hours of preceptorship for students in their last semester of RN instruction is a very poor substitute for what used to be 12 to 18 months, or beg your pardon, weeks of industry training that nurses used to get, where they're partnered with somebody, for the whole time they're on the job. Now. That said, the bachelor's, as I've indicated, is in high demand, and we have been finding ways in which to partner with other institutions. Our students are transferring, about 50% of them are transferring into RN to BSN programs. There are some eminent programs in the area. There are some online programs with private institutions. There are public institutions that are building their own RN to BSN, even as they offer their own BSN programs. And I would be remiss if I didn't call out our partnership with Point Loma Nazarene University, who has partnered with all the RN programs in the area. in a confluence of our missions to help provide an RN to BSN program right at our campuses. And in fact, Grossmont College students graduated this summer with the Point Loma Nazarene program. I'm looking at my colleagues from Point Loma in the audience with great thanks. We have now our 5th cohort started. It is not enough. All the public to private
and
programs
I don't
are
mean
not
to cut you
enough.
off, but we need to move. But you bring up an important point. There are several routes to trying to get students the degrees they need. And I want to ask my colleagues, again, both of you, incredibly important information. And at this point, do you all have any questions for the panelists? Senators, Assembly member? Okay, I have one question. With regard to how you're currently seeing industry responding to the baccalaureate program, I guess this is probably a question for the workforce partnership. Are you seeing, what have you heard from your labor, your folks that you talk with?
For the community college
Yeah.
baccalaureate program, good things, but I'm probably less knowledgeable about how folks are responding than some of the folks coming after me.
Okay.
I've just heard on the fringes very positive development, and folks are excited to see what comes of it.
Okay, thanks, Andy. And Dr. Gzelli, clearly Grossmont has a well-established, well-regarded, very well-regarded nursing program. In addition to the fine partnership you have with Point Loma, are you interested in expanding to possible on-campus four-year degrees from Grossmont if legislation were to move in that direction?
And this is very much a yes and, in the sense of we think students should have options, so yes, of course, and we want to maintain our partnerships.
Sure.
There are a variety of financial and reputational questions that counterbalance each other. Many of our students don't go on to bachelor's programs because they can't afford it. The idea of the $10,000 bachelor's degree in nursing, I think, is one that California really needs to own in a big way. At the same time, we're partnering and our students are transferring to excellent institutions, and we don't look for that to decrease. Again, in 4 years' time, there's an expectation that those who are hired have bachelor's degree in about 80% of the cases. We're only getting about 50% of our RNs into bachelor's programs, so all of it is needed.
Great, great. Well, thank you both very much. As we bring our next panel up, we'll transition. We'll add another chair and maybe refresh people's water if you need additional water. I'd like to, again, thank and excuse these panelists and call up Dr. Pamela Walker, the Vice Chancellor for Educational Services of the California Community College Chancellor's Office, Dr. Constance Carroll, our host, and Chancellor of the San Diego Community College District, Dr. Sunny Cook, Superintendent President of Miracosta Community College District, and Dr. Ding Jo Curry, Professor of the California State University at Fullerton. Just a quick time check. We've got about 40 minutes left in our original 10 o'clock to noon target. We will probably go a bit over that, certainly no later than 12:30 total, because we want to hear from public comment as well as closing comments from members. But we have so much expertise represented up here, we could go for hours and hours and hours, but let's not. And with that, I'd like to begin with Pamela Walker.
Thanks, Chairman Block. Senator Allen, Senator Hill, Chair Medina, and of course, Senator Block. Thank you so much for allowing me to present for a few minutes on the process of what the California Community College Chancellor's Office did to bring these degrees to fruition. Let me share with you, I am not necessarily a longtime state worker. I have spent most of my career, all of my career, on college campuses and was the interim president at American River College before Bryce Harris called me down and asked me to help him out as the Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs and then the Vice Chancellor of Educational Services. And then he said, oh, could you do this prior learning work, and could you just do this baccalaureate degree and maybe a little inmate ed and something with veterans? I said, absolutely. This one was a very important program to work on, and staff in my office went gangbusters to put this together. When these good people think about legislation and come up with this significant bill language, and then it comes to us, and we have to try to make it work for the colleges. And so just let me run down the things that we do at the state role. We developed and administered the application processes, developed the guidance for the 15 pilot colleges, coordinated meetings, supported and coordinated efforts with all of the colleges, including with my colleagues at North Orange Community College District, and someone's pushing the button wherever Joyce Kerrigan is. There she is, helping us along with our good friends at the Academic Senate. And Craig Rutan is in the office or in the audience today and is a member of that Senate group. We had to develop lower and upper division curriculum. We developed new Title V regulations. We evaluated the program's contents. We dispersed funding and tracked expenditures, and we got to something called California Community College Baccalaureate Degree Pilot Program. And you will see that Dr. Harris, in his wisdom, said, don't just center these degrees in one place. Really think about the full state. I think I stole this from you, this one. I stole this from Dr. Carroll, and I like it. And so we came up with 15 baccalaureate degree pilot colleges, very interesting in nature. And we tried to do some work with those colleges to have 2 dentals, to have 2 respiratories, to have 2 biotechnologies, so they could work together and partner together across the state. We also, if you look at those programs and you'll say, what about equine and ranch management? Well, go to Quincy and realize exactly what that college, Feather River, is doing for that community and for the ranching community. And they are a very robust college. Why do we need mortuary science? Really? We all need mortuary science at some point. And we want them to be the best educated they can be. Along with that, our health management systems, both management program in San Diego as well as in Shasta, to have the North and South work together to try to pair that. So we did everything we could in all of our programs, and you'll see a variety of programs that are career technical education in nature. Airframe manufacturing in Antelope Valley is getting their students hired before they finish, because of the industry out in the Lancaster area. So as you look at all of our programs, we have done a pretty broad breadth. The application criteria was about regional and statewide labor market. It was about employee demand. We wanted to make sure we were doing the work at meeting unmet workforce needs. We needed to have an evidence of lack of program duplication with UC and CSU, and that wasn't easy, because there are some programs that might have familiarity. The program at Santa Monica College is a significant program, but has no documented knowledge of that kind of program anywhere else or that course. But interaction design will give those students an opportunity to have $100,000 jobs in the Los Angeles area the day they get out. It's an incredible digital program. We looked at demographics, and Nabil talked about what happened at West LA. I will tell you that The 35 students in the baccalaureate degree at West LA today, largely underrepresented, were in that program last year in the AA program when then Vice President Biden stopped by, and they said, come back in a year because we're going to have baccalaureate degrees and we'll really clean your teeth. So you kind of think of the kinds of things that people were saying and talking. We looked at regional characteristics again and enrollment data in the, both in the college and the district. We evaluated student interest. We looked at the 5-year enrollments in the AA programs with their graduation projections, and we looked at what that proposed curriculum would look like. Our folks worked really hard in a very short amount of time. We convened many times together. We gnashed our teeth around upper and lower division. And what was rigor? What was rigor? And our folks, our faculty, I'm proud of them for the work they did in just taking this on as something new and energetic and careful. In our application criteria, we looked at the size and scope and success of existing associate degree programs within the discipline of the proposed characteristic in the baccalaureate degree, and we looked at the timeline for program planning and implementation and degree completion. Our criteria again looked at geographic distribution of the pilot colleges. We have them up and down the state, in the Central Valley in the north, in Southern California. We looked at the diversity of the pilot programs and lack of duplication. I think the important part for us was how could a college manage this, because it was going to change a college's profile in some way. So the summary of current and historical college and district accreditation status, verification of college and district long-term effectiveness, identification of experience in appropriate program administration, and support staff with sufficient time allocated to ensure that this could be a successful program. And we looked at their resources. College capacity to provide necessary and appropriate resources, along with the resources that Senator Block found for us. It was important that they could find resources for these new programs and not deter from the work they were doing with other resources. So we asked a lot of different things of our colleges in a very quick time. They had about 45 days to put this together, and I think you heard earlier there were 36 colleges that wanted to do this. What we said at the Chancellor's office is, we're not going to fight with you in your districts. I'm not going to fight with the Los Angeles district and all those colleges. You fight it out with each other. You decide which program is best, or which program you're ready to go with first, because I think there were several best in each of the districts. Probably there would have been an additional 25 colleges inside of multi-campus districts that wanted programs, but they had to fight it out so we could get to those 15. And in that way, we also had to look at accreditation. We have something we call the Accrediting Commission for Community and Junior Colleges, ACCJC, and we had to have a great deal of dialogue and work with them, and that's not over. That dialogue has continued because they have to do a substantive change to do a baccalaureate degree. And then several of our colleges also have external licensing, dental hygiene, respiratory, mortuary, health management. So they had to go through all the steps of accreditation with their own work as well. So the fall 2016, I told you I moved them very quickly. I was a coach in a previous lifetime, and so if you say go, you need to go. And they did. And so 10 of our colleges started in the fall 2016. I mean, they did this in this time zone that was just an incredible start. They started, and they have students in their programs with our additional colleges starting in the fall 2017. And part of that start was new presidents, changes in personnel, doing a little more deeper work with their colleges. Not that they couldn't start, they just needed another stutter step to get ready. So, what are we doing right this second? The student interest in the baccalaureate degree programs, we ended a number of students expressing interest in the 15 programs in the first blush with no marketing, with no conversation, was 5,443 students indicated that they had an interest in one of these programs. And of the applications received and the students are in the programs today, I would say that this current structure has been, while it's been fast, has been thoughtful, has been deliberate, and has been intentional, so that if in fact in a future this is continued in California, that we don't have to recreate all of this again. We did everything we needed to do for whoever it is that's going to do this next, and incoming Chancellor Oakley will have this on his plate at some point as well. But whoever's going to do this next, our work was to make it deliberate, to make it thoughtful, to make it structured, so that no one had to do the groundwork again. And I think we were successful in that endeavor.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. Incredible amount of information in a very short time. Move on now to Dr. Constance Carroll.
Yes, thank you very much, and welcome, Chair Medina and Senator Hill, Senator Allen, and Senator and Chair Block. We are very pleased to have you in the San Diego Community College District. Our district has 106,000 students. We have 3 colleges and 7 campuses of adult education. So we're a major a player, as it were, in higher education in California. I've been chancellor for 13 years, and before that was president of one of the colleges in our district and several other colleges in California. So I've watched the California community colleges for over 30 years. My academic background is in the classics. All of my degrees are in ancient Greek, and that is why I'm in administration. So, and I've focused very carefully on administration. As a result, I have to say that September the 28th, 2014 was a game changer for us when the governor signed Senate Bill 850, and we're all grateful to you, Senator Block, for your tremendous leadership of this effort. And I'd like to review very quickly why we are doing this. There are really 4 reasons. The first is that many employers now require bachelor's degrees when they did not before. Many professions have elevated to that level. Second, public universities do not offer degrees in these same fields and have no plans for offering these degrees. So there's no potential of conflict. As a result, many of our community college degrees either are obsolete or are becoming obsolete because of the elevation toward the bachelor's level. And for students, the only option, if they want to pursue work opportunities and through these degrees, is to either leave the state of California, which many have had to do, or enroll in very, very costly for-profit institutions. So as a Californian, it's very clear that we need a better alternative for students. Someone mentioned families earlier, as well as employers, to close this gap. We're in a context in which 80 colleges in America, 80 community colleges, currently offer over 500 bachelor's degrees with great success, with great coordination with the public universities in their states, and with great student outcomes and workforce placement. 80 colleges offering over 500 degrees. And in California, we're talking about 15 degrees, a very tiny pilot, which needs to expand. And what I would like to do in my few minutes is to talk about a practical path that we are currently following, and some suggestions that I offer respectfully for you to consider. Many of the degrees that are being offered, bachelor's degrees that are being offered, are already being offered at the associate degree level. So the ramp up to the bachelor's degree is not as difficult as one might think. In fact, the associate degree, the bachelor's degree that we're offering in the San Diego Community College District is at Mesa College. It's the Health Information Management field, and the president of Mesa is here, and thank you for your work, Dr. Luster. In this instance, the college already had an associate degree in health information technology. The college already has a facility and state-of-the-art equipment in health information technology. The college already had a qualified faculty teaching in the area of health information. And in addition, the faculty member who is the head of the program is also the president of the National Association in Health Information. So there's no a question about quality. The college is already has an accreditation by the National Association for Health Information. And so the ramp up to the second level of accreditation was also not very challenging. The job market is already there with tens of thousands of shortages nationally, and the job placement is anywhere from $80,000 to $144,000. So good paying jobs. And no public university in California offers this program, and no public university in California plans to offer the program. So the ramp up was easy. It was a low cost to implement and makes nothing but, in our opinion, good sense for California, for the local job market here in San Diego. It enjoys the support of all of the hospitals and clinical agencies. The students will have jobs upon completion. As the kids say, students say, this is a no-brainer. So my personal hope would be this. We would hope that you would consider delaying the sunsetting of the current pilot. The Senate Bill 850 calls for a sunset in 2023. That's just 7 years from now. We hope that you would expedite the interim reports and the final reports by the Legislative Analyst's Office, which are required before the legislature can consider its next step in terms of expansion. And I would add a hope that we begin the process of progress reports, since a number of the institutions are already operating their programs. This expediting the evaluations and reports would then give a foundation for a thorough review, I would say, within the next couple of years, so that our greatest hope would be that the legislature would consider simply allowing a change in mission to allow community colleges to offer several bachelor's degrees on an as-needed basis. Senate Bill 850 already has some very good guidelines which we can follow. And I'll end by saying that colleges and universities develop and delete degrees all the time. This with no legislative need. This is a simple matter based upon need. And my hope, as someone who's very active nationally in community colleges, would be that California arrives at that same level of sophistication where we can stop talking about whether or not the degree is viable or necessary, and simply allow the great institutions of California to address the needs of students and to meet the workforce requirements of the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor Carroll. Moving on now to President Sunny Cook from Mira Costa College.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I, unlike Dr. Carroll, was not trained in the classics. I'm a biologist, biochemist, and a biotechnologist by trade. And so I've been teaching and doing work in this field of biotechnology and biology for over 20-some years, and have overseen almost every workforce program that a community college could offer in 2 different states at 3 different institutions. So I was in Texas when the bachelor's degree program was started there, and the criteria that were used to decide where a program would be and what kinds of programs were there was something that I was intimately involved in at that point. I have spent the last 2 years leading a task force on workforce education in this state that is focused on the other 1 million shortage. So I've been asked by the Chancellor's Office to lead the task force on workforce, and we focused on the 1 million shortage that was related to some college up to an associate's degree, the middle skill jobs. And that's a crucial also a gap that needs the community college's attention as well. And we have gotten great practice at both the access issue that was raised and the success issue. We've worked for a couple of years now specifically around bringing new generations, new students, new populations into a workforce that has more people retiring every day than we have people behind them to fulfill. And we have great experience now at increasing the completion rate of those non-traditional first-generation students, as well as those returning to the workforce. So we're bringing that expertise now to this second 1 million shortage. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the very deliberate and strategic process that our college used, which I think is similar to what other colleges use as they applied in this competitive process for the bachelor's degree. We began by knowing very well the 2014 report about the Talent Report on California's workforce needs in the life sciences sector. And that was a significant report that showed that the biomanufacturing industry requires 4-year degrees, and specifically in research and development, but also bioprocessing and manufacturing. So to explain that very, very simply, as a concept goes from research and development to proof of concept and through the FDA clinical trials, you're then getting ready very quickly to go into large-scale batch production. And our graduates in this program are going to be the ones that ensure the quality and the consistency of each batch of product that's going to be entered into a human or some kind of living thing. And so these students are certainly those that are highly required by the 500 life science companies that are in San Diego County, half of them at least, which have a scope within the scope of our bachelor's degree. And so we started with that report. We started with what are the companies in San Diego that require these workers. We also looked at our own unique strengths. We have a very well-established biotechnology program that has 3 certificates and 1 associate degree that it awards. We have, as Dr. Carroll mentioned, highly qualified faculty that qualify to teach in this bachelor's degree program as well. So we looked at need, we looked at employers, we looked at demand, we looked at our own talents and strength, and then we sat down with our CSU partners and said, here are the various ideas that we have that build on our strength and meet a unique workforce need. And we sat down in partnership and discussed that this would be the place that is a unique degree in the nation and that has not existed and will not exist in the public university sector within the state. It doesn't currently exist within the nation. In fact, we've worked with a dozen or so companies that wrote support letters for us that were directly involved in the curriculum development, and they are very interested in our graduates. And there's one company in particular, Genentech, which has a Northern California location and a Southern California location, which is working with both of our degrees. Solana College is going to offer a bachelor's degree. They're a little bit behind MiraCosta in getting the accreditation to do so, but we're hoping that they will also start in fall of 2017. So we're getting ready to hold information sessions in December, first week of December. We have over 5,000 contacts, unique contacts that are interested in this particular degree. I think there is way more demand than we can meet with a 30-student cohort, and so I want you to realize we're going to have to hold back the wave of interest in order to start a cohort so that we're sure that it will be successful. We are pretty much our 30 students that will enter this cohort in fall of 2017 are going to be spoken for by their first semester, no doubt, because of the strong industry partnerships that we have. So I'd say to you, as you look to the future, that we do want to continue to focus, as we have, on unique workforce needs that are unmet, on demand that will not be met unless our dynamic and nimble community colleges are providing that support to our business and industry. I think you raised a great question about, is there room for duplication? I will just speak for one hospital that's less than 2 miles from my college, does not include the 3 systems that are preeminent in San Diego. If you look at the turnover of nurses in our county, it's about 17 to 18% turnover. If you think 10%, let's say 10 or half of them, 10%, are those that are actually leaving the workforce permanently, perhaps retiring, perhaps leaving the state, there is a huge need for nurses that I think it cannot be met solely by the partnerships that we have in place, and we also have partnerships with private universities, cannot be met by our public institutions currently. And I think many of those nurses have stayed in the workforce longer than they might have liked because of the recession. They are now beginning to retire in greater numbers. And so I do think that there is a very good case to be made numerically for the capacity of our state, the capacity of our system, and the needs that our hospitals are going to have, especially as in my region alone, we are expecting the population of 65 and older adults to double in the next decade. And that means additional health care for preventative and acute care hospitals. So with that, I appreciate your support. I have been with you through 2 different versions of legislation, Marty, and I'm so glad that we're part of this particular legislation. I appreciate all of your support, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Cook. And our last panelist who's doing institutional research on a statewide level, Dr. Ding Jo Curry.
Thank you, Senator, and the other senators for hosting this hearing. And I think for me, you're probably wondering, why is the CSU sitting here? Because I currently work for CSU in the Higher Education Leadership Program, particularly with a focus on community college leadership. And they say that your past follow you, such as the case. I have prior to arriving at CSU, I have had over 30 years of experience working in the community college. So a few years ago, I retired as chancellor of Coast Community College District with 3 colleges. So with that context, that I have come into working with the BTP program, and I want to thank the Chancellor's Office as well as North Orange Community College District for giving me the opportunity to work with the 15 colleges in the capacity of providing, designing, and facilitating the professional development opportunities. And in addition to that, I want to thank the Chancellor's Office for the wisdom to fund 2 research projects within this context. One is the out of the Center for Research of Educational Access and Leadership at Cal State Fullerton. We're conducting actually 2 studies. One is a national study with best practices around the country. As you know, California is not the first, and certainly since 1970, we have had 22 states have followed suit in this movement. And we're taking a look, a broad brush, at what are the best practices, what are the success factors from other states to avoid some of the painful mistakes that maybe they have made and clear the path and giving us a shortcut. Second study is actually focusing on the California 15 colleges and many case studies of each that we can tell the California story, not only in reviewing, reflecting what has done well, what we have done well in planning and how do we select the programs for California, as well as the process in which the best to implement the baccalaureate degree from the community colleges. So from those 2 major activities at Cal State Fullerton, I want to just share with you some firsthand global observations. I personally witnessed the high level of commitment, dedication, quality, as well as the resolve of the colleges, all 15 colleges' efforts in leadership with this endeavor. You have to know that this is really unprecedented. Though there have been, more states more than half of the states that have implemented the baccalaureate degrees from the community colleges level, but none like California. We always want to do things different in California, so none has started with 15 programs at 15 colleges. So this is truly unprecedented. I think our success needs to be measured in that context alone. And secondly, there's no other state has launched a program in the kind of short time span as California. Thanks to Chancellor Carroll, who's really been the leader of the pack in championing and being a trailblazer. In fact, a lot of the lessons learned from California comes from the several steps that Chancellor Carroll's leadership in California in championing this effort and establishing the baccalaureate and now offering and granting baccalaureate degrees. So we have done it here in California from application to now 10 colleges offering courses this fall semester. That's in the 24 months time span. That is not to be underestimated, the power of California. And also to look at where we are today, the tremendous need and support that come from not just from the Chancellor's office, certainly from the legislature, but more importantly, that who have been most passionate about this is really the business industry. They have pulled in the support to allow us to move forward so quickly. And I think secondly, as you saw the list that was presented, the vast diversity of the program that's offered from airframe manufacturing to mortuary science and so on, that this is another huge statement about the vast diversity of workforce needs. We are one giant economy in California, right? I mean, stronger than many countries worldwide. A strong economy needs a strong, vital, vibrant workforce. And this is what I see in terms of the excitement that come from the baccalaureate degrees. Certainly we saw heard the numbers about the number for workforce shortage, but the quality of the workforce that we will produce from the California baccalaureate degrees is unmeasurable. And the impact is still yet unknown, but we know it's going to be a force to be reckoned to keep California's workforce competitive, not only here in our own region for our individual workers base, but certainly statewide at the national level, if not at the global level. So another critical factor from our observation, and this is really thanks to Senator Block's leadership and vision, in not only championing and authoring the legislation that will forever change California's history, but your vision and tenacity to include in the legislation funding for the implementation. Well, I would say from the comment and the feedback we received from the 15 colleges, is the funding sufficient? Hardly, but this is also a unique feature in California, and I think this is a critical factor in our success so far in a short amount of time. You know, when you build a building, they say, well, how fast do you want it? How much resources do you want to put behind it? That has a correlation to the speed in which we do it. In addition, it has a lot to do with the quality that we will see in our program offers. So the minimum funding that we have received is critical. And the other factor from studying other states in our national best practice, that what we have found is that Esnick in his studies in 2013 look at the not California, but national baccalaureate degree offered by community colleges. He said he has affirmed that knowing other best practices certainly give us the opportunity to avoid the previous mistakes that other states have done. So we have taken advantage of that by affirming that we are going to learn the lessons from other states and avoid the mistakes and take the shortcut that's been given to us. So I want to really appreciate, again, your effort and the Chancellor's Office wisdom to put in the National Best Practice Study. as well as our 15 colleges study. And with 10 colleges showing tremendous success in their fall start, I think that we are very confident from our workings very closely with the 15 colleges. We have had 2 summits, we have 1 summit, and we have more symposiums and more summits to come to share the experiences from other states, in addition to learn from the 15 colleges that have already taken underway. So the world has becoming, much more complex. So the workforce also needing different level of skills and the complexity of workforce needs. So I want to thank you again, for Senator Block, for your vision, and I think those 2 posters on the wall that I saw is certainly right. That was then, the California Master Plan was then, and then this is wow right now. From me at Cal State Fullerton, certainly teaching in the program that the Cal State has fought so hard to have, of EDD program in cultivating and nurturing and developing future community college leaders, it's out of need that the UC system cannot meet. Though certainly it's coming around that the community college system also has a tremendous need to educate the workforce that's needed for not only this century, but the future to come. So
thank you, Dr. Curry.
I urge you to continue this legislation and let it happen for the California's future sake.
Very much appreciate your comments. And this is a hearing. The main point is for my colleagues to hear what the experts have to say and to build on this legislation should they choose to. One addition to what Dr. Curry said, the additional money, $6 million that was found to help the program get started, my colleague on the panel, Senator Allen, also sits on the Budget Committee and also helped to get that $6 million. So a shout out to Senator Allen. With that, we're just about at noon. I know some of you probably have other places you need to go. Here's what's going to happen next. We're going to have questions, comments from the senators and the legislators for this panel. Then we will have public comment for those who are able to stay and wish to make comment. Then we'll have closing comments or statements from the legislators on the committee. With that, I'd like to open it up to my colleagues. I see Chair Medina first.
Yeah, I have a question for Vice Chancellor Walker. Vice Chancellor, what would you say has been the biggest challenge for you, for the community college system, in implementing this measure?
Probably the first biggest challenge was we didn't have enough options because everybody wanted in. I think that it's about the timeliness of moving a new program like this to completion. And I think that individuals believe that if you don't start quickly, you won't be successful. So some colleges were able to move quickly and get it going because of the work they had already done on their campuses. And I think that others then are trying to be deliberate in making that next step. And so I think there's a little bit of uncomfortableness there. And the other thing I think is I had a college president text me last night that said, if you don't say this, which is really about if you only have students doing part-time work, they're a little nervous about the marketing of the long-term significance of a pilot with a sunset. So we just need to be constant in how we explain that to students who are in this part-time.
According to the figures that I have here, there are 10 colleges that have implemented the program, and the figures that you've provided, 206 students in the programs right now enrolled. Do you have the figures per college? Could you go over those? Do you have those?
I do.
Of the 10 existing programs? Can you
I do.
give me those?
Feather River started with 50 applications received, and they have 26 students enrolled currently. At Foothill College, they started with 83 applications. They have 24 students enrolled. Skyline College had 42 applications, and they have 28 in their first cohort. Bakersfield, well, let me just go down the list. Bakersfield College had 17. They had a physics prereq, which caused a bottleneck in that class. Right now, they have 14 accepted. Antelope Valley had 19 received due to the strict prescriptive CSU BS LDGE requirements, 18 admitted, and they like to tell people that 33.33% are female. Cypress will start in 2017. Maricosta will start in 2017. I think San Diego Mesa has 35 in your cohort, 25 in your 20 in your cohort. And they had some prior learning work they were doing because there are students who are interested both in returning to school as well as starting. They have freshmen starting as well. So they're actually running two. Rio Hondo College had 30 and with 45 identified, and West LA, 71 students applied, 51 for the class, but right now they have 42. So they have 42 in their class. So that's a pretty significant first start, and that was done without much marketing. Gosh, don't let me forget Santa Monica. 54 indicated an interest, and 23 were accepted.
23.
Sorry.
Chancellor, could you address the diversity, and we also have those numbers here. When I'm added up, I have 12 African-American students of the 206, 50 Latino students, so I'm adding up 62, 31%, if I do the math correct. And being a trustee and an instructor, I know that's very low in comparison to the number of students that are enrolled in our community college.
So remember this, in this first endeavor, it was to make sure that we probably were working with the students who are already there. And so if you look at West LA, their student population is significantly underrepresented students, and their entire program is students of color. So I think it's going to develop, as we develop these programs in this next iteration, I think there will be more defined work by the colleges. They will be able to spend a year talking about, or at least as Sunny talked about, they'll be spending this entire semester talking about what this program would look like and what are the responsibilities of a baccalaureate degree. And for some of our students, particularly our students who happen to be parents, it's about redeveloping their schedules, right? And how they're going to be able to take these classes when they have childcare needs and other things. So I think you'll see a different set of demographics in the second iteration of this program in the second year. We moved colleges through a process in less than 6 months. So they were moving very quickly to get these programs in place without much marketing and without much deep embedded support work that needs to happen. I think you're going to see a completely different goal. And talking to our colleagues in Washington and in Florida in the last few weeks and months, it really takes like one kind of start. You know, they get it through the first start. By the second class, you will see a completely different population, I believe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Medina. Senator Hill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you for the hard work that I know we've seen. Oh, thank you, Senator. Thank you for the hard work in implementing the programs and getting them started. And I think, Dr. Walker, you made when your initial comments about kind of the legislature kind of put it together gave it to you, and then now you had to make it work. And that's generally how it happens, unfortunately. But then when you step back at what the legislature had to do with that, and, you know, politics is the art of compromise, and then it's also sausage making, as we know. And so I guess in looking at what we gave you, there could be a lot of concern that we didn't give you something that really works well, or that could be successful at the end of the day, or gives us enough information at the end of the time for the LAO to really determine whether we have a successful program or don't have a successful program. And then it gets to is the number of 15 programs. I mean, where did that number come from? And I know I've talked to Senator Block about that, and it seems like it's kind of an arbitrary number that came out of, you know, 15, why isn't it 30, or should it be 30? And then the other issue that I find challenging is the issue of the lack of duplication. Rather than having some geographic concern in one part of the state where a program may be offered, but you're in the other part of the state, and how do you provide that opportunity and education to those students there, which makes no sense to me, frankly, when I look at that. So I guess the question is, do you feel that there will be enough information based on the limitations that have been placed on this to really evaluate at the end of the day that we have a successful program, and that one that could be advanced beyond this? And then secondly, and that Chancellor Carroll made the comments of some suggestions that she had looking forward in, you know, increasing the sunset to make it more workable, shortening the time for some evaluation. You know, I'd like to go beyond that if we can. And so are there other areas where you think we could implement further, you know, taking the politics out of this? This is some other opportunities for success.
Well, I'll answer a part of this. I think that the state of California is quite fortunate that you got us this piece of legislation that we could develop this program. So anytime you develop a program, there probably a year from now, we will see it, some things we could do a little bit differently. We put the colleges through a very rigorous process to try to determine the very best colleges to date to start. And I think that I believe that the colleges that are doing that work today, along with my colleagues at the Faculty Senate who have spent an inordinate amount of time talking about what are minimum quals. Again, what is rigor? That wasn't in this legislation. That was additional work that we said it was important for California. If you're going to do this work, do it right. And just don't do it and then have it stop someday. So I think the legislation gave us a chance to develop a program, and I think that we took extra opportunities by working with Dr. Curry and others so that we could teach each other. I mean, this is really about this teaching and learning process. So if we're going to be part of programs like this, let's make sure we do everything right. And if we miss something, let's make sure we come back to you and say, you know, we could do this differently, or this might work better, or here's another idea. But until we worked very collaboratively and we taught each other this process, we couldn't get to that place. And I'd be remiss if I didn't bounce this to Dr. Carroll in any way that she sees it.
I will simply add briefly that, yes, I think there's more than ample information even now in terms of the quality of the program, the experiences of the students, and of course, job placement is going to be a key factor, and that will be known soon. The programs operate in a broader context in which there are 22 other laboratories called states which do the same thing with great success. The newest state to join was Delaware. And I got back from Oregon not too long ago. They are putting together a plan as well. So this is a very straightforward type of program with students, curriculum, accreditation, job placement, demonstrated needs. So I think those elements are already present.
And Senator Hill, if I take the prerogative of the chair to comment, you said taking the politics out of it. And unfortunately, as you well know, you can't really take the politics out of it. But I think one advantage of having the three of you here today is you're all leaders in your respective houses, very much so. And if you carry legislation like this in the future that expands this with the advantage of evidence that things are working and working well, maybe that can undercut some of the politics. The CSU was absolutely unwilling to not, they would have opposed this legislation had we allowed any duplication. If there were a program in Humboldt and we wanted to, and nowhere else in the state, and we wanted to offer it in Grossmont, down here in San Diego, they would have opposed this legislation. They wanted no opposition regardless of geographic issues. If the California Nurses Association, if we had nursing as one of the bachelor's degrees, California Nurses Association would have opposed this. And the reason is kind of interesting. It's almost counterintuitive. Most of their members are two-year nurses, are not BSN nurses. They feel that the hospitals are dictating to them that their nurses should have four-year degrees, be BSNs. The nurses in hospitals, you guys know, often are at odds. They don't want the hospitals dictating to them the minimum qualifications, and they don't want their current members to be displaced. So the politics that came to these decisions are very real. The limitation to 15 programs, the chair of Senate Education, who won't be in the legislature any longer, and there'll be a new chair, but she had concerns, legitimate, that expanding the program too quickly might be a problem. And we heard from Dr. Curry that this is unusual for the U.S. to have as quick an expansion as we've had. So I'm so glad you three may be, a lot of our other colleagues may be interested in continuing these efforts, but as you know, politics will always be in it.
And my concern with that is just what would be the ideal situation, and then we'll fight the politics when the time comes. You know.
Great. Yes.
In talking with other states who have had the 22 that have this legislation, how do they reach the conclusion to offer the baccalaureate degree? A very common comment had been shared. Last time, about 3 weeks ago, we had the symposium, and it actually was Michigan reconfirmed, in his presentation from the system level that he was right there in negotiating with the legislature about what the final policy will look like, and that was at the final hour, and how you negotiate in or out to make it go. And a very common phenomenon is that in order to make the legislation go, things had to give up. And part of it is really a decision for the legislature to decide, is it the right thing for California? Is there a need in the workforce? And the answer is yes. And how do we meet that need, given the systems that we have in the three systems of higher education? And is it right for California community colleges to mitigate the shortage in workforce needs in our state to offer baccalaureate degree that without duplication? The answer is, of course, yes. Then if it's a right thing, and to start, take your toe in the water with the pilot, it works. But in other states, when they were crafting the legislation, and the consequence of the wording of the legislation in pilot has plus and minuses. The plus is you actually can get a start. The minus is that, and we're actually feeling that now from the comments, the discussions we have, and challenges discussed among the 15 colleges, is the word pilot, actually it's a stopgap. It's a real challenge in marketing for the business industry as well as for the students, because they do not know, is this going to be staying, or should I really outsource my workforce needs from other states? Is this going to stick in California? So this This is, I think it's a critical decision for the legislature to decide. For the long term, is it the right thing? If it is, then we need to give our business industry as well as our students, our citizens, the assurance that California is going down this pathway, and that makes planning much more solid.
Thank you. Moving on to Senator Allen.
First of all, thank you so much. I guess what I'd love to hear, I think, Dr. Curry, you're in a unique place, having seen things, as you mentioned, from the community college side and now being on the CSU side. I'd love to get your sense of where, maybe your speculation, I suppose, on how the CSU perspective evolves on this, if at all, because they're an important piece of the political pie and the jurisdictional pie. The other question I'd like to ask everybody is, if you didn't have the rule associated with not being duplicative with the CSU and the UC system, what would be the 3 top majors that you would want to do? And maybe some of the folks from the previous panels would be interested in commenting on that. Nursing, programming, dental hygiene. What would that look like, given all the workforce needs that are out there and the core capacities that exist within the college system?
I'll just do real fast from the Cal State perspective. And my experience in both systems now is that does duplication make sense? No, for the large part, unless you have an industry that has the workforce needs that cannot be met by Cal State or UC combined, then it does absolutely make sense to open it up for the community colleges. And does it make sense to have this territorial turf war? Absolutely not. We have evolved. The California Master Plan was brilliant at its time, but world gets complex, our system is complex. We really need to look at how do we improve upon the California Master Plan to leverage the strength of each sector. And there are certainly, I see resources being wasted on all 3 sectors, that if we would combine and leverage the strength of each sector, I think we can be a much more powerful higher education system in workforce development preparation. And then thirdly is that I think when we start this next phase, I think we learn from our errors and mistakes is that consultation, collaboration, and partnership are keys for future success. So I think a lot more consultation between the sectors is necessary before we take serious action, and respect for each other's domain is also critical.
We need to move to public comment in just a couple minutes, but the 3 top degrees of duplication were an issue. Chancellor Carroll and
Can I
President
add to
Cook.
that?
Sure.
I would like to say I think there are arenas in healthcare where, nursing in particular, but there are others where the entry level is a bachelor's degree, and so I think those require critical look. I think without sharing too much, I think the other places where MiraCosta was very interested in extending our expertise with unique workforce needs are in certain applied business areas as well as technology computer areas. So those were 3 of the areas that we were very interested in. Computer technology areas with specific workforce need, and then some applied business areas as well.
Chancellor Carroll?
Yeah. The top area number 1 is nursing. We're on a slow motion train wreck because of the fact that by the year 2020, and by my count, that's 2.5 or 3.5 years from now, hospitals will be required to have 80% baccalaureate trained nurses. And if you look at what will get us there, there are almost 80 community college nursing programs at the associate degree level, which will become obsolete, and I believe only about 20 nursing programs in CSU. There is no way even to come up with the capacity that will be needed. So nursing would be number 1. Number 2 is the other great shortage, and that's teacher education. And then third would be a whole range of programs, but nursing and teacher education are going to be the great catastrophes for California if we don't do something.
So the camel's nose is under the tent. Now the challenge to you guys is to get the rest of the camel under the tent. With that, I want to thank and excuse this panel very much. You guys were great, as you always are. And now, public comment. Any members of the public who want to address the committee, please form a line in the center. And if there are none, that's fine. But if anybody wants to speak, get up now so we can see. And public comment, because of time crunch, we'll limit to 2 minutes per member of the public. I see Peter Zishi, and I see about just a couple other people behind him. So when you speak, introduce yourself, tell what organization you are with or represent, and then you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Peter Zishi. I'm a board member in the San Diego Community College District here in San Diego, and I want to speak briefly on workforce development because that's something I've been working on most of my adult life. I was a member of a joint union management apprenticeship committee back in the 80s, and I'm familiar with that system. But we're talking about college, and we just reviewed a board policy on the purpose of college education, what we're looking for in an AA degree. And I think it's very relevant because employers will tell you today that whatever technical skills you have in a job, what they're really looking for is the soft skills. Do they have individuals that are going to thrive and create and be productive in their field? And when I read this policy that we have on academic education, what we're looking for in AA degrees, I think it speaks right to what students get out of a college education versus what we know they come out with from a high school education. So let me just read this very briefly. The awarding of an associate degree is intended to represent more than an accumulation of units. It is to symbolize a successful attempt on the part of the district's colleges to lead students through patterns of learning experiences designed to develop certain capacities and insights. Among these are the ability to think and to communicate clearly and effectively, both orally and in writing, to use mathematics, to understand the modes of inquiry of the major disciplines, to be aware of other cultures and times, to achieve insights gained through experience in thinking about ethical problems, and to develop the capacity for self-understanding. If you said to an employer, this is what I bring to you because of my college education, I think most employers, if you have the other prerequisites, would be thrilled to employ you. And so the importance of having the college education beyond all the technical things and all the statistics is, what are we creating? What kind of individuals are we creating that are ready to be productive and creative members of our workforce in the 21st century? That's what I think we're doing, and I think that's not only a service to the employer, but to the students and the communities we serve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name is Carol Whaley. I'm an adjunct here at San Diego City College. I've been here for 17 years, and I'm also the chair of the San Diego Adjunct Faculty Association, representing adjunct faculty across San Diego County. And I'd like to say that we as adjuncts and myself as a parent, we really support this affordable baccalaureate opportunity for students in California. But as adjuncts, we would like to say that we are the resources that you guys are talking about. We as adjuncts teach. We comprise about 70% of the faculty across the board of the community college districts, and we teach approximately 50% of the classes. And we are asking that as part of this program and as a commitment to education, that that the inequity between a part-time faculty member and a full-time faculty member, the inequity in the job be addressed. You talked about, a lot of the people talked about preparing students for good paying jobs. And with this increased need for degrees, we have an increased need for educators. The thing is that today, a teaching job in a community college is not a very good job. There's not a lot of opportunity to get full-time positions, so most of the community college teachers are part-time teachers. And there are many, many areas of inequity. Probably the greatest is in pay. a maximum load adjunct who can teach up to 67% of a full-time load makes approximately $23,000 per year, whereas a full-time tenure track professor in our district makes $70,000 to $90,000 and on up.
Thank you. Time is up. Assemblymember Medina has had some really good legislation supporting adjunct faculty. You may want to grab him on the way out the door.
Okay.
Next speaker.
Debbie Berg, former director of the nursing program here at City College. I just really want to encourage everyone to consider nursing when continuing to expand this program. It's so important. And I'd really like to answer your question about what we're doing about the returning vets and in assisting them in, getting, what am I trying to say?
So
Credit.
Transition. Yeah.
Credit for,
yeah.
returning into the programs and especially in nursing. So, check with me later. I can tell you what we're doing.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you.
Hello, this will be really quick and simple. My name's Gina Hooper, and I am a licensed funeral director and apprentice embalmer in Huntington Beach. And I want to thank, especially you ladies, for coming up here and all of you for pushing through this baccalaureate program. I just wanted to comment that it's quite inspiring watching this happen. I hope to be one of the students that is going to be in this next semester coming up to take advantage of the opportunities that you're giving us. And I hope that we continue to push it forward in the years to come. And thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Good to
Happy
hear from a
Halloween,
student.
too. Yes. Yeah.
Next.
Hi, my name is Arnie Schoenberg. I'm a teacher here as an adjunct in City College. I'd like to follow up with what Carol was talking about. I think the solution is not quite just to go to Jose Medina to ask for legislation when we have people on this board that are opposing that legislation and where the adjunct issues are being ignored and trying to find equity is becoming harder and harder through legislation. So we need to do this in all venues that we can. That's why we're here today. I know you talked about that we all need to do heavy lifting, but the real heavy lifting is being done by these adjuncts. At my office hours yesterday, I share with 5 other adjuncts. I had to wait to get to the computer for the other adjunct to leave. Then I was there to do the rigor of helping a student find out how to do research techniques and find peer-reviewed journal articles. As an adjunct, I'm paid 10 cents on the dollar for those office hours. A full-time faculty is paid 10 times as much for an office hour as I am. That solution, in order to find rigor, you need to solve this adjunct problem. So I just want to bring that up for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And Assemblymember Medina wanted to comment.
Yeah, just quickly, as a former part-time instructor and now chairing higher ed in the Assembly, I very much understand the challenges faced by adjunct faculty.
Thank you.
Whole range of them. That I think some of them have been addressed over the years, increasing office hours, providing office hours, those kind of things. The legislation that I passed and the governor signed this year took 2 years, but it addressed rehire rights of faculty. And I think it was a good one, and I think it's a step in the right direction.
Thank you, Assemblymember. With that, I will now turn to my colleagues. We'll start at the far end to just move toward me and ask for any brief closing comments.
Well, I will begin. I shared the excitement when I saw this SB 850 that Senator Block introduced. I shared the excitement. I remember calling him on the phone when I first saw the discussion taking place. And I certainly supported then and still support it. And I heard a lot of good things coming out of this hearing today. Some of the things that I heard about that I'm going to take with me in Sacramento moving forward. Evidence. I think that's very important. I think it's very important to strengthen the program, that we have the evidence of how effective are these 10 initial programs being. The other one, consultation. I know how important consultation is among the segments, and I think someone said that we need to have more of that. I think we do. And the third thing that I'm taking away is the idea of expediting the report from the legislative analyst. I think that may also be helpful as we move forward. So I thank the Senator Block for bringing us together to see how we can move forward, and something very important to the state of California.
Thank you, Chair Medina. By the way, from Riverside. Now from San Mateo, Senator Jerry Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for convening us today and for having this subcommittee hearing in beautiful San Diego. The excitement for me really was the first panel in really outlining many of the needs that California faces in terms of job. The 1,000,001 that seems to be a number that resonates so well with all of us. But that just shows me that we have a future ahead of us that's growing, and we have great need in California. And then you take that with the programs from SB 850 and the success that we hope to see, and what really looking at Chair Medina's comment about, the aspect of moving as quickly as possible to get whatever results we need, to get whatever analysis we need, so that we can really get to that first panel's solution and get the workforce and meet that demand that we have quicker rather than later. And I think this is the best opportunity. I think there are some obstacles that are in place right now that are preventing us from moving in a rapid way or in a successful way, and I'd like to see what we can do to make some changes there to make it work. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Hill. And from Santa Monica, Senator Ben Allen.
Well, thank you first of all to the chair. This is your very last hearing, and it has been a real pleasure getting the chance to work with you over the last couple of years on this subcommittee, which, as you say, helps to control half of the state budget, and you are really going to be missed in the Senate. And I think you've left a real lasting legacy with SB 850. I got to say that my initial reaction to the bill, and of course it was passed before I got into the legislature, but I was initially a little skeptical of it. I'd served on the Board of Regents at the University of California as a student member, and I think had been kind of indoctrinated into some of these jurisdictional arguments. But I think over time it became abundantly clear that the workforce needs associated and also the capacity associated in the community college system merited doing something like this. And I want to just invoke the memory of an incredible friend, mentor, David Fiscal, who was a member of the Santa Monica College Board of Trustees, who had been pushing for something like this for many, many years. He's passed away, but I've been thinking about him during the entire hearing today. Now, I echo the comments made by my colleagues that ultimately, since we're going to do this, and there's so many good reasons for moving forward with this, that now we've got to figure out a way to make it more responsive, more coherent, work better for the system, and work better ultimately for all the young people coming up through the system, and all the workforce needs that our state has. And Marty kind of took us to where we could go, given all of the crazy politics. Now it's going to be our job to try to work within that same political minefield to make the system mesh better with our state's economic and workforce needs. And that's just going to be the great challenge here. But ultimately, I can only hope and think that we ought to be able to find a way to do that, and that many of the big special interest groups have shifted position or been willing to make changes and compromises over time, bowing to the pressure of the great needs of the state. And I can only hope that will be the direction that we will collectively take this. I know you're going to stay very involved in higher education policy and are passionate about this, and I look forward to working closely with you, Mr. Chair, and the other folks who've come to speak today as we try to make, as we do the 850.2.0. So thank you again for your leadership, and really we're going to miss you a lot in the Senate.
Well, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Senator Allen, for the very kind words. In addition to the interest groups who have at times lined up against this proposal, depending on what it contained or what it didn't. There has been the overarching master plan lurking in the background. And the master plan has served California so well for, 50 to 60 years now. But it is, in fact, time to continue looking at retooling. Some folks have said, and this is UC, CSU, and others, that this is really a change in the mission of the community colleges. And I don't see it that way. I think, as Chancellor Carroll once said to me, industry standards have changed. The mission of the community college has always been to educate students for the workforce, to help our workforce, help our economy. And that's still what we're doing. But instead of demanding 2-year degrees, now in many, many instances, industry is demanding 4-year degrees. So while some worry about this as being mission creep, I've said in many places that the only thing that's creepy is not allowing our students and their family and California's economy the opportunity that it needs. With that, I want to thank you all for attending. And by the way, the people in this room, the legislators and the professionals here, you are the ones who are going to take SB 850 and really make it something that even Florida and other states will point to and saying they're doing it the right way in California, like we do so many things the right way in California. So I want to thank you all for being here.